A small storm system in the eastern part of the United States and a major storm that's in the west that's going to bring blizzard conditions to parts of the Dakotas and move into the east later this week. And we're going to focus our attention on both because the first little system may throw in a little bit of a surprise in some places. We'll talk all about that and the long range and anything else you want to talk about on this Sunday morning Joe and Joe Weather Show. And that's brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. If you can't get rock salt where you are, you can certainly get it at Omni because they are Long Island's largest rock salt source. And they've got plenty of it, along with all the great snow and ice melt products like Mag, Ice Pellets and Flakes, and Pelledo. And, of course, if you need a new snowblower or two or any other supplies to get you through this winter, you can head over to Omni, 631-756-1125 for the best prices anywhere. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. I'm wearing my Bayonne, New Jersey emergency management sweatshirt this morning. Not that they necessarily need emergency management today, but it's comfortable and it feels good.
Well, it is a kind of a comfy, cozy morning to be indoors here in Putnam Valley. We have about 32, 33 degrees out there. About an hour ago, we had big, wet flakes falling at a light to moderate pace, but right now I can see that we don't have much of anything happening and no accumulation on the ground. But what really threw me for a loop this morning, Joe, is the difference between the NAM 0Z run and the NAM 12Z run. Now, last night, the 0Z run had dumped on LaGuardia more than 0.6 of an inch of liquid precipitation, and the T1, that's the level of the atmosphere from the surface to about 1,300 feet, was all the way up to like 6 degrees Celsius. I mean, very warm for the low end of the atmosphere. And that would have suggested that many areas would see nothing more than wet snow or rain with hardly any percent. Now, all of a sudden, things have changed. The amount of precipitation that the NAM is now showing compared to last night for LaGuardia has been halved. It's now only about 0.3 of an inch, but in the same token, it's also a lot colder. Now the T1 level, again from surface to 1,300 feet up, is only at +1 Celsius. So barely above freezing, barely above critical for rain versus snow. A colder run, but a somewhat drier run than what they had last night. And you say to yourself, at this point in the ball game, when you're so close to the actual event, that you'd figure that, you know, everything would start coming together. But now there's like major inconsistencies between what was being indicated 12 hours ago versus what is happening now. Now we have a storm that's north of Lake Erie, and it is anticipated by this evening to be somewhere over central New York, and that's about the same time that the upper low that you've been talking about for the last few days is going to start to do its thing. So I guess what we're going to be waiting for is to see what all happens later today and tonight with this whole thing beginning to evolve and take form. And if the upper low does do its thing, as you said, have been saying, there could be a bit of a surprise for some in parts of the tri-state area and parts of the Northeast by tomorrow morning.
Well, and you know I love using the FOOS, which is the numerical interpretation of the NAM. However, we have to bear in mind that you're looking at one specific point on that FOOS, which is at LaGuardia. What we don't know, and the one site I missed terribly, is the Texas A&M site, because they had a setup where I could put in Bridgeport and pull up the interpolated FOOS for Bridgeport, or I could put in Islip. I could put in any point, and just want to show you, because I don't think you've seen this. So this is off Pivotal Weather. So this is the the NAM liquid precipitation for the next 24 hours. And what you will notice, Joe, is let me put it in a good spot here. Yes, it gives New York City, as measured by LaGuardia, as you said, 0.3. It gives Brentwood on Long Island 0.7, and it gives Norwich in eastern Connecticut 1 inch of liquid. Okay, Hartford 0.7, Waterbury 0.6. It's a narrow band. Even Albany gets 0.8 of an inch of liquid. Poughkeepsie only gets 0.3. Now, this is why I was concerned about this upper low, and I still am, because it's a very, very vigorous feature, and it's tight. And if you look at I'm going to bring up on Tropical Tidbits the 500 millibar, the upper air, and that's going to come up on the screen now. I mean, take a look at this. There's a closed low this morning sitting in eastern Michigan, and if you look at the signature on the radar, I mean, it really does look like an upper low. Look at the jet that comes down right over northern New Jersey, and then tomorrow morning the curl of that jet is sitting over Connecticut and central and eastern Long Island down to near off the coastal waters. I go back to what I said on Thursday. Anytime you deal with anything that resembles an upper low in a situation like this is where somebody gets a surprise. And somebody may wind up getting a surprise. And even down places on central and eastern Long Island, eastern Connecticut, if you look at the NAM, and even some of the other models are picking up on this, they may wind up with something. It may only be a slushy coating to an inch or two, but it may be something. It might even be a little bit more. The NAM puts out some kind of off-the-wall models and off-the-wall numbers at some places.
I'm looking at the Les Plumes, and Les Plumes is suggesting, Joe, that the peak of whatever we get out of this is going to come our way sometime between 7 o'clock tonight and 1 o'clock in the morning. That the 3-hourly snowfall is peaking right about that time, and that may be when we get the surprise, if you will. But through the day today, the combination of the sun being out and being able to work with its ultraviolet and infrared rays through the clouds on the paved surfaces, and the fact also is that the temperatures are going to be probably just above freezing, even in the coldest spots in the Hudson Valley, would probably preclude much in the way of any snow accumulation. By the way, I did a kind of a semi-rant last night. A friend of mine had asked me, would it be okay if she drove from Rockland County to Bergen County and then back to Rockland County? She was delivering groceries and saying hello to her parents in Bergen County. He said, is it going to be okay? Can I drive between about 11 o'clock this morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon? And I said, so long as the municipalities do their job. And this is something that I ranted about because Orange County had a winter weather advisory, but Bergen County and Rockland County, as of last night, did not. I didn't have, here in Putnam County, a winter weather advisory, neither did Northern Westchester. And I'm scratching my head. I'm saying, why are they getting the advisory in Orange County and I don't have anything to show for it? And I realize that this is the game that some municipalities, not all, but some municipalities play. In order to be parsimonious and to save a few bucks, they say, well, the Weather Service didn't put us on a winter weather advisory. We don't have to worry. We're not going to brine the roads. We're not going to put anything on the roadways. And we're probably not going to get a little bit of snow anyway. And that is the worst kind of situation, because even with a small amount of snow, you can have very slick and slippery roads, and you could have any number of accidents if you don't treat those roadways. And I was concerned last night. Now this morning, finally, we are here in Putnam County under a winter weather advisory. So is Rockland, and I think also Bergen too. But my thoughts were that if the Weather Service doesn't do anything about this, if they don't advise people that there may be some wintry weather, some of the municipalities, some of the local highways may just simply say, oh, well, we don't have anything to worry about. We don't have to put anything down on the roadways. And that's when you get the worst possible scenario. You get these people go out, they go 50, 60 miles an hour on a little tiny coating of snow, and off they go, off the roads, and accidents and everything else.
It's always like that with the first one of the season anyway.
Yeah.
It's like that for us as forecasters. We haven't done this since March. Now we're after being off for 6 or 7 months or however long that is, we're back doing it for the first time, just a little bit rusty. So it takes that first one kind of is always the one that everybody's at some level is rusty. And let's put this in context too. I mean, this is not a major event. It's a minor event. In some places, it might be a little bit more than minor, but it's not some huge deal. I guess my rant will probably be tomorrow if we wind up getting what's forecasted, and you'll have these people come on and say that the forecast was a bust because they didn't get a foot, which of course was never going to happen anyway. So that to me is something that I cannot stop getting worked up over because it just makes no sense to me. Where did you even get the impression, if you're talking about a coating to a couple of inches, that it was going to be a coating to a couple of feet? And because you didn't get the couple of feet, it's a bust. If you forecast a coating to a couple and you get a coating to a couple, that's a good forecast.
Yes.
It's not a bust. Okay.
Right.
I think, I know they're trying to say that maybe in their minds they would have liked to have seen a lot more and that they're disappointed. Okay, but the bust part to me points to the forecast, and if you get what you're supposed to get, if you get what's being forecasted, that is definitely not a bust. So anyway, on that note, let me just say a big good morning to everybody a wonderful good morning to everybody on the chat board. We have a couple of early super chat hitters today, Joe. We have David Fuller, who says he's now in the city. I assume he means in New York City, waiting for Maria, because his wife was in the hospital for some surgery. So hope everything went well, and I think it did. He said it did. Was snowing a little bit, came to the city, 41 degrees, was 37 up in New Milford in northern New Jersey. Yeah, this is all the stuff that's going to stick is going to come down with the upper low, and that's not going to happen much during the day today. Tepe 9076. Thank you for hitting the chat board. It seems that you are new. I'm sorry, it's for hitting super chat. And it seems that you are new on the chat board and wishing us happy holidays. Happy holidays to you too. And thank you very much for your support. So on that note, and by the way, today has to be a better day for me because last night I was coming back from the park with the dog and I hit a deer.
Oh, wow.
That was, yeah, I'm still pulling hair out of my grill. But actually, the deer was hit by somebody in the opposite direction, and it was standing on the opposite side of the road, just standing there. It was something out of a movie. All of a sudden, because it was dark, my headlights picked up on the deer, and it's on a road where you can do 50 miles an hour. And I slammed on the brakes, and I hit it. The deer was killed, unfortunately. But what am I supposed to do? Very little. There's a crack in my front grill with some fur sticking out of it, and this is the second time in my life that I've hit a deer. Once back on Long Island where I lived on the way home, and it was midnight. This was at 6 o'clock last night, and it was dark. But fortunately, I'm okay. My dog's okay, and the deer is gone, sad to say. But anyway, let's start with what's going on at the moment.
Before you begin, David Fuller said in his super chat hit that it was 41 degrees and snowing a little bit. And I was watching last night on some of the local TV channels, and all of them were saying the same thing. Well, here in the city, it's going to be above freezing, so it'll probably start as rain. And I'm yelling at the TV screen saying, no, it's not going to start as rain if it's above freezing. The atmosphere, the column, during the overnight and early morning hours this morning is going to be very cold, very dry. And so whatever precip that starts as snow aloft is probably going to make it all the way down to the ground as snow. It's probably not going to start as rain. It is probably going to be as snow, which David Fuller just verified here from if indeed the city that he speaks of is New York. Also, John Charles, and I'm sorry to use these $5 words, Joe. He had a question mark. He said, parsimonious? Like I didn't know what parsimonious, Parsimonious. And when I was using that to refer to some, not all, but some highway departments in their lack of wanting to put salt or chemicals or brining the roads in advance of what they would feel would be a minor weather event. Parsimonious means
cheap.
Unwilling.
Cheap.
Unwilling. Would you let me read the official definition here? Unwilling to spend money or use resources, stingy or frugal. And the and the example they use for the word, even the parsimonious Joe. I think that was actually, I don't know, either one of us, Joe. Even the parsimonious Joe paid for drinks all around. So there you go. That's what parsimonious means, John Charles.
While the sanctimonious Joe lectures people on the use of alcohol. Yes, I get it.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a look at I got a localized watches and warnings map. It's all winter weather advisories here. No, there's not going to be any winter storm warnings. Winter weather advisories posted. As Joe mentioned, they put his county in it.
Yay!
In Connecticut.
I'm happy about that because as of last night, I said to Renata, I said, did they do anything to the roads? Did they brine it? Did they put anything down? And she said, I don't think so. So I'm hoping that since last night, now that we are officially under a winter weather advisory, either they have done or will do something to those roads, because some of the roads around here where I live, as I mentioned, with just even a slight amount of snow could be dangerous. So in fact, Renata got into an accident 17 years ago on the road right out in front of our house because there was a little. It's inclined.
Yeah.
And she's coming down the road on a slight little bit of snow, and all of a sudden she just simply lost control of the car, or the minivan. It could be dangerous. So I hope they go out and they do something to the roadways, because we're going to be going out this afternoon, and I do not want to slip, as the old song goes, I don't want to go slip sliding away.
Yeah. After about 3 o'clock, when you're getting within 2 hours of sunset, and going into this evening, stuff that falls tonight's going to stick to pavement. So winter weather advisories, as you could see, cover the Hudson Valley all the way up into northern New York, north of I-90, including Albany and Utica. Binghamton's in it, Scranton's in it in northeastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, in Sussex, and also in western Passaic County. Under winter weather advisory, extends to just north of New York City. The counties in Connecticut north of I-95, except for the easternmost part of Connecticut, not in a winter weather advisory, and the western half of Massachusetts is. And I guess the question in my mind is, with this upper low coming down, I honestly don't think anyone's going to know until sometime this evening as to whether there is going to be a surprise in places, say, on Long Island, or maybe even a little one back into New York City and the northeastern counties of New Jersey and the left-out areas in southern Connecticut. They may wind up having to extend those, so we'll be on our toes to see what they're doing with that. And here's the snowfall forecast map from the Weather Service. And the southern flank of a coating is in the lightest blue, and that gets down into they did bring that to the north shore of Long Island, over New York City, the northern, most of northern New Jersey, north of Route 78, and then you start pumping up, those ones and twos and threes, up the Hudson Valley, even some fours and fives, and get up into the Catskills. You've got some 6, 7, and 8-inch numbers, not out of the question. And also in the Berkshires, north of Route 84, you See numbers up in the 3, 4, 5 inch range. Again, this is a moderate event, and that's there's the upside to me is again is the upper low coming down, and what is that going to do?
Well, I mean, you remember those days, back in our younger days when we would have a map and we would go, do hourlies and write up sectionals, and the abbreviation that we would always look forward to seeing after an hourly weather report would be pressure falling rapidly. And then we'd look at that and say, okay, here it comes. And indeed, within a short while after that, you'd see the intensities of the precipitation begin to increase from just spotty and light to light to light to steady to moderate, and away you go. And that is something that is worth looking for tonight with this upper low as it moves across the northeastern states. As I said, the Pia Delabriowski model, the plumes, is suggesting that we will start seeing maybe something like that sometime after 7 o'clock up till about 10 o'clock or midnight tonight. So for all of you who are snow lovers in the tri-state area and are rubbing your hands together and saying, come on, why isn't anything happening, whatever, really, if anything does happen with this, it probably will happen after dark, after sunset into the first part of the night tonight, if it indeed does happen.
Yeah, I just pulled up the hazards map so we could take a look at some of the current observations. And Joe, I'm going to start with Long Island. It's not that warm. I mean, it's in the mid to upper 30s.
Right.
Which a lot of the guidance was taking temperatures up into the middle 40s from overnight. That it seems to me that that's going to be a really tough thing to pull off. The winds are northeast, and then if you just go just north of New York City, the temperatures are pretty close to freezing. 33. Just pulling up Waldwick in northern Bergen County, for example, they're 33 with a dew point of 30. In Sussex, in northwest New Jersey, 7 miles, and they're saying it's mist. It's probably light snow. 34 with a dew point of 28. Just trying to get an ob here. Montgomery up in Orange County, it's 30 there. 7 mile visibility with light snow, northeast wind, which is interesting. Poughkeepsie is 34. They have 2.5 miles in light snow, 34.28. And a lot of those temperatures, if they start to get into the intensity part of this at some point later today, those numbers are going to come down. 28 in Monticello right now. They're 1.25 miles with light snow at Monticello up in the Catskills. And Catskill Center is 32 with a dew point of 30. So you get the idea. A lot of temperatures in northeast Pennsylvania are in the upper 20s and low 30s. You'll see what that 27 is. Mount Pocono is 27, 3/4 mile. So almost moderate there, moderate snow there. 27, 27, 100% relative humidity. Just take somebody that's around there that's got a, okay, so Hazelton, which by the way is 1,500 feet up, is 3230, and they are also 3/4 mile, so almost moderate snow there. And further up into upstate New York, you got temperatures in the 20s. Same for Connecticut, especially north of Route 84, temperatures at or below freezing. Even south of Route 84, it's at or below freezing. I think Danbury is that Danbury? Sherman is 31. Danbury is 34.
Sherman is what now?
31.
Now, what's Mr. Peabody?
Yes, I was good. I avoided that. I did avoid that.
Yeah,
all right, let's on the satellite, as we could see, you could kind of pick up. There's a lot of clouds that go all the way back to west of the Mississippi River. Of course, we did actually have a decent day here in North Georgia yesterday. It was the sun made an appearance after being gone for 4 days in a row, but we're back to gloom and doom today. with cloud streaming there in the south. But you could kind of see a little bit of twisting there going on in the eastern lakes with the upper low. And of course, by the way, we're going to talk about the system coming into the west now, because that's going to be a powerhouse going into the plains and eventually reach the East Coast later this week, which we'll get to in our conversation here in just a bit. Now, here's the radar. And again, the signature here to me, Joe, is the upper low is very well defined. You're getting this arm of a lead moisture that's come in this morning, and now you're going to have to wait for this whole curl to start dropping southeastward. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to see a lot of this stuff that's up to the north just gradually translate itself south and southeast as we go through the afternoon, and certainly tonight. And again, tonight is from 7 p.m. to maybe say 4 a.m. in that window. That's when we're going to get into that upper low and in that jet, and that's when you're going to probably put down whatever it is you're going to put down.
Well, we'll see. There could be a surprise. And of course, what happens is that the system that is now in place over the region just north of Lake Erie, that continues east-southeast, actually fades out as it laterals its energy via the upper disturbance offshore to a new system. And sometimes what happens is that you end up in a zone where there's not much of anything between the dying precipitation to the west and the new zone that is revving up to the east. And sometimes you end up with not much of anything, but sometimes that new system that is developing to the east revs up so rapidly that it just spills over back into your area and spills over with a rather significant amount of precipitation. So that is what snow lovers are hoping for and looking for the overnight hours, as you mentioned tonight, Joe, is that disturbance revving up quickly and throwing back all of that moisture and producing maybe, not a blizzard, not a heavy duty snowfall, but just enough to people wake up tomorrow morning, they'll see the snow on the ground, and whether or not, if you're a snow lover, you say, oh wow, look, and if you're not a snow lover, you look out and you say, oh poo.
Yeah. Right. So if you do get snow tonight, the person who on my Facebook page wrote that because we haven't gotten any snow in the first 10 days of December, that they're not going to see a flake for the entire winter. You can rest assured that your prediction was wrong. In the south, we have some showers in parts of South Carolina, northern Georgia, around the Atlanta area. Into Alabama, we're seeing some rain there, and extends back down into southeastern Louisiana and along the coastal bend of Texas. And then meanwhile, in the west, heavy rain and snow continue all the way down into southern California and up into parts of Nevada. The Sierra Nevada is getting some heavy snows, as is areas in Idaho, which have been getting hit pretty hard in the last couple of weeks, and also into parts of Washington State and in Montana. Just want to show you what's going on out in the west. We have a really large area of winter storm watches up from northeastern Colorado and western Nebraska, just about all of South Dakota except the southeast, all of North Dakota, eastern Montana, and northeastern Wyoming. This is as this western storm translates east of the Rockies, and we've got winter storm warnings up for a good chunk of the state of Nevada, in California, up and down the Sierra Nevadas. Winter weather advisories northwest to southeast in Arizona, including southeast Arizona. We've got winter weather advisories up scattered through Utah, western Colorado. You can see there's sort of a mishmash of advisories, winter storm warnings, and even a couple of avalanche warnings that are up for the west. A dense fog from southwest Texas northeast into northeastern Missouri, as they're on the warm side of this, and they're setting up for severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center is indicating nothing today. Tomorrow, they've got a marginal risk from north central Texas into central Oklahoma and into south central Kansas. But take a look at day 2, and they've got enhanced risk already in northern Louisiana, with a larger area of slight risk that covers eastern Texas and east across southern Louisiana and into Mississippi, also portions of southern Arkansas. in an enhanced risk, and that is outside. We can't see the categorical risk for tornadoes, but I think there's going to be some tornado activity with this. And on day 4, the risk shifts to southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. Again, all because of this powerhouse storm that's going to be heading up into the plains.
And this storm eventually will be a part of our weather here in the eastern United States. But again, a lot of uncertainties as to the strength of the storm, the track of the storm, how closely it'll come to the immediate New York City area, whether or not there'll be enough cold air. Right now, it looks like, Joe, that it may be a bit too warm for the white stuff for New York and Long Island. But again, some uncertainties for folks north and west, which have that possibility for a bit of frozen precipitation. This would be, again, for probably Thursday night into Friday, and we'll see how this all pans out for the end of this upcoming week.
All about the block. At the end of the day, it's all going to be about the block. So here's the snowfall forecasts out in the west, in the plains, with a foot or more being indicated. And WPC in their long range was pointing this out late last week, so they were certainly on the ball with that. And you see the areas of, let's call it 10 inches plus in southeastern Montana, western parts of South Dakota, extending into a small area there in northwestern Nebraska. And you got varying amounts of half a foot to a foot in some places in Colorado and in parts of Idaho, also being indicated back through Utah, Nevada, and of course the Sierra Nevadas. It just snows in feet there. And even into Arizona, they have measurable snow being indicated all the way down to southeast Arizona, places like Tucson or outside of Tucson. There's even a 14 print in that county there that's in southeastern Arizona. So pretty impressive. And in terms of probability in the long range, I thought this was really important to take a look at here. So we're going to take a look at WPCs. I'm just going to freshen it up because sometimes around this time of day they update this. So let's take a look. And first of all, starting out, this is day. Now, why does it have Thursday? Oh, day 4. I'm sorry. So this is day 4. So the storm now in the plains is coming out of that long range time frame to see big amounts. The big amounts will be Tuesday and Wednesday into Wednesday, but they still have fairly high probabilities of snow, 50 to 70% in some areas in the Dakotas and in Montana, and also in the Western Lakes. In the east, they actually had an area for Thursday. They've now taken it out, and they have it for Friday. So here's an early look, and they have a 10 to 30% for at least, let's call it 3. I always 2.5 to 3. Wish they did it just the same to be consistent like they do with the other short range where they do it in inches instead of this liquid equivalent of snow and sleet stuff. But they already have a 50 to 70% chance of at least 2 or 3 inches in western Maryland, northeastern West Virginia, and then on up through central PA and into a small portion of southern New York. They've got 30 to 50 in northeast PA, just touching northwest New Jersey, and the southern flank of 10 to 30 is Philadelphia to New York City to Hartford to let's call it Springfield, or between Springfield and Worcester in Massachusetts. So they're kind of bullish here. At least for the interior. And even on Saturday, they're still pretty bullish up for upstate New York and Vermont and New Hampshire, and still have a 10 to 30% chance lingering down into parts of central New Jersey and then west across Pennsylvania. So WPC is probably as confused as we are with the block and what the models have been doing over the last couple of days with this.
Well, the track, again, is going to be all important. And if it comes too close to us, I've noticed that a few of the long-range guidance models have been suggesting that for even into the Hudson Valley, On Friday, temperatures could be in the 40s, which would obviously kill off, and 50 degrees for New York City, which would obviously kill off the possibility of any significant snowfall. But everything is going to hinge on how strong the system is and how closely it comes to the coast, and a variety of different things. But I think it's your CYA forecast as far as WPC is concerned for places in the Northeast for wintry or snowy or icy conditions for the end of the weekend or the start of next weekend. It's well out. It's 5 days out, and you might as well just cover yourself with some kind of a forecast for wintry precipitation. And as things move along and develop, we'll have a better idea as to what may or may not transpire Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this upcoming week.
All right, so why don't we look at the short range, at least for today, with the WPC and what they did. Was going to skip this, and then I thought, you know what, we've got something going on, so at least let's take a look. So this is the probability of at least 2, and this forecast was done about 2 hours ago, a little over 2 hours ago. So they have, you could see where they have the almost 100% probability up in the Catskills and points north. They kind of cut it off down near the coast. I mean, this is based on overnight guidance. I'd like to see, as they absorb the morning guidance, if they wind up changing this. We can go a little more short range than that, but before I do that, let's go out to the west. And here's what they've got with a probability for at least 2. And you can see the dark blue there is, a lock for 2 inches in the Dakotas. That's at least 2. So if you're listening to this, okay, please remember, listen to the words. Don't listen to what skip every other word and come out with the fact that, oh, he only said we're going to get 2 inches. Okay, no, this is the probability of at least 2. But for those folks who need to see bigger numbers, let's do the probability of at least 8. Okay. And even here, they've got at least an 80% chance in western South Dakota of at least 8, and a fairly large geographic area of 50% or more probability for at least 8. So this is going to happen. This is a lock. It's always amazing to me in the plains and in the Rockies and the upper Midwest, when the models put a storm there 7 days out, it's there. Okay. In the East, it's a whole different ball game.
In the East was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean,
they don't have uncertainty there.
But even in the East, as you pointed out just a few moments ago in the Catskills, I mean, they have a fairly certain idea that at least a couple of inches is going to fall with this system that we're looking at for tonight.
Yes.
But of course, it helps when you're at an elevation of anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 feet. That certainly goes a long way to helping out if you want to see the flaky stuff.
Oh, no question, no question. For me, it's just the fact that the model puts a low. If the model puts a low in central Nebraska 7 days out, it's a wrapped up low. It's there. It will be there.
Yes.
Even at 7, it will be there. The model puts a low off at 40 and 70 with big snows all over the Northeast 7 days out. It's not going to be there.
Well, we go back to the early days when the models, we're talking now about models that don't even exist anymore, like the barotropic, or as we used to refer to it as the bustatropic,
right?
Or the LFM. The limited fine mush, or the PE. I love the PE, the primitive equation model. And they put a massive storm on the map, 4 days out or whatever, and you say to yourself, "Oh my God, look at that! We're going to get creamed or anything." And then when it finally comes the day of the event, it's like, where is it?
I know.
It's nowhere to be found.
Now going forward, okay, I have the upper air up, so let's take a look at this, and this is going back to Thursday. Now we actually had a couple of weather systems that moved along in the flow, but the problem is with everything that was going on off the East Coast, there was no room. So as these systems that produce precipitation in the Great Lakes and in the Ohio Valley and in the South, here where I am in Northeast Georgia, when those systems translated eastward with the blocking going on into the north, it was a no-go. They just completely fell apart. So that was that for those two. But the third one in this series is one that stands out a bit more, and you can see it back there on Thursday. Moving right along, this little cutoff across northern Iowa on Friday, well, that died out. That was the one for Friday night, Saturday morning. Now, here comes the next one that came into the Pacific Northwest, riding across the plains into the Great Lakes. You got this nice little closed cutoff low with a good solid jet streak there. You see in the darker brown. That is what's coming through tonight. And again, this is where you could wind up being a surprise if you're in the path of that jet, that swirl that you see that comes across Pennsylvania and then just hooks back into upstate New York. This is this evening, and then it's just pretty much right over southern New England, Long Island, northern New Jersey, right in there. So that's, this is why I'm concerned with the surprise. And that's actually hooking up with a shortwave that's rotating to the northeast near Newfoundland. And that's going to pick it up and deepen a storm offshore. Now here comes the system in the west, this really vigorous system into California that moves east and gets all wrapped up. Now here's the forecast dilemma for the end of the week. And I don't think that the models still have this figured out. So I think we have a little more time to get into for this to get into gear. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
And by the way, Ralph.
Yes.
I knew there'd be a by the way in there somewhere.
Right.
There always is a by the way. When you go 4 or 5 days out and you say, here's the problem. Now, here's the thing that I have to – there's always that disclaimer. I mean, it's very rare that you can – there have been in our careers, ladies and gentlemen, there have been maybe 2 or 3 times where even as far as 10 days out, we knew that what was coming was going to verify because everything was in place. All the models were on the same page or whatever. But more often than not, when you start looking out 3, 4, 5 days ahead, and you see something, and as Alan Casper used to say, you have to forecast with your head, not with your heart.
Right.
But Joe, move forward and tell us now what is for Friday the by the way.
Okay, so here's the situation with this block, which has been very challenging, I think, to forecast. So this is Tuesday night. You have a wrapped up upper low over Maine. You have a wrapped up upper low in Nebraska. Now, the Nebraska upper low, if the East Coast system moves out of the way really quickly, would normally want to go up in toward the Great Lakes and eventually up into Canada. The problem with that is that you've got a big blocking high that is sitting to the north of that. And I'll just widen out to the North America view, and you can see how separated these systems are from the flow in Canada. You've got the upper flow. Let me just get my map here. So here's the jet in Canada. It's way displaced up to the north. So you got all these systems here in the southern part. Actually, there's one out near the Azores. There's the one off in Maine. There's this one in Nebraska. There's another one off the coast of California. There's still another one way back up near the international date line. The whole jet is just displaced to the south. Well, if the one in Maine sits there, the one in Nebraska, which cannot go northeast, is going to get shoved underneath. And you may have seen a couple of runs of the GFS over the weekend that showed, and going back to Friday, that showed that happening, where it would get suppressed to the south, and that seemed a bit too unrealistic. But as far as Thursday and Friday are concerned, if the upper low that is here on Wednesday sitting near Nova Scotia does not get out of the way, then we're going to take a track further to the south. Now, the latest runs have it actually getting out of the way to an extent, and therefore that upper low kind of stays alive there back over into Minnesota, and you see this arm that just sort of swings up and around. Okay, that would probably produce a low that would be, let's say, more of a coast hugger and have a hook back to some kind of low in the western lakes, which would be favorable for snow for inland areas, but not for the coast. But
Right.
the thing for me that we got to keep looking at is are the models correct in taking this low that's now rotating around in from Newfoundland or just northwest of Newfoundland, and it swings around down into Maine. Does that get out of the way or not? The Azores low that's ahead of it is going to hold the key to that, because if that's wrong, then this one's going to get hung up, and then we could go back to maybe a colder solution and something trying to get completely forced under the block instead of being partially forced under the block.
Leon Pravitsky says we need a 40-70. And then what that is referring to, for those of you who are the uninitiated, that's a storm that will move through the zone right around latitude 40 north, 70 west. And that usually is the perfect position for a storm, especially in the wintertime, to bring significant amounts of snow. But as Joe said, what looks to be more of a coast hugger for the end of this week. And when they hug the coast, that usually allows warm air advection from the ocean to come in and usually, at least along the coastal plain, keep things a bit too warm for snow, make it more of a rainy event. You have to go well inland to keep the cold air and to also keep the snow.
Right, and here's the new GFS, by the way, after just showing you what that upper air did. You see the surface low in Nebraska. Now, this is where it's different from yesterday, where that low just sort of translated eastward into Illinois and Indiana and died out, and the coastal low completely took over. In fact, if I show it to you, I'll go back to let's go back to, say, I think the 12Z run from yesterday. Is that the one? And you can see here, maybe even the one before that. Let's go 0Z Saturday. Well, all right. This is the run, Joe, that where everything was suppressed. The low to the east takes its time going out. The Nebraska low just dies out there in the plains. A new low forms, and it's so weak that it goes. This to me was really ridiculous and unrealistic. If we go to the 12Z run on Saturday, which was probably a bit more realistic here, this is where the low just dies out there in the plains. The new low forms in South Carolina, goes to Delaware Bay, and then just kind of either hangs near the coast, or as the European had it yesterday, translated out toward 40 and 70 and went out to the northeast. Today's runs, again, now we're talking about smaller changes from run to run, which at the end of the day is probably a positive from a standpoint of confidence. This is the run from today. Hold on a second. Let me make sure I got the right time frames here. So here's the run from today. It's the plains low just is a little, takes longer to fall apart. You get a low that forms somewhere near Delaware and then just kind of sits out there, and you see it sitting there along the central New Jersey coast. You got snow up in upstate New York and in northeast PA, and then it starts to intensify as it heads to southeastern New England. So it's a bit more of a coast hugger than where the secondary completely takes over. That's going to be the big issue for the latter part of this week.
Right. I can see that they have, for example, they have a 968. No, excuse me. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm not using my correct glasses here. I think it's a 998. A 998. Yeah, it's a 998 low on near Toms River, New Jersey, by 7 o'clock on Friday evening. And that's much too close. And of course, if you take a look, this is as of 7 p.m. on Friday. And if you look at what the GFS is cooking up now, I'm so happy that we were able to see the GFS during our Sunday morning show this far out. That it's mostly rain. It's just too warm when they come that close to us. Initially, maybe for the inland spots, it'll start off as frozen or some snow and sleet. But when they move up the coast and hug the coast like that, it just is much too warm for any prolonged period of frozen precipitation.
The longer term, since we're not going to solve the problem of the short range, the longer term looks on the cold side overall. And in fact, it's got a couple of southern systems. It's got snow from me, Joe, next weekend coming in on the southern part of the jet. You see it there. Moves out and passes to the south and east of the northeast. and a nice big cold high coming down, and then another low comes out of the Gulf states around the 23rd and moves up the coast, if you want to believe it, and more cold air coming down out of Canada. So at least from the standpoint of a colder pattern, it's certainly there. The upper air is suggestive of that. The block, by the way, kind of holds on to some extent as we head into through next week and a little bit beyond that. It's still kind of blocky up there in northern Canada and up into the Arctic region, and the jet is still displaced. And more importantly to me, in terms of the long that I think is more important than the block, is this right up there. In the Northeast Pacific, that's your negative East Pacific oscillation signal. As long as that ridging holds up in the Northeast Pacific, you're going to have colder than normal conditions spread out over a good chunk of North America. This is a cold upper air that we're seeing here on the GFS out about 9 or 10 days from now.
Yeah, well, that's 9 or 10 days. We'll see. I was looking at yesterday's run of the GFS, the 12Z, and if you had asked me around the 23rd of this month what it would be like, I would actually have said unseasonably mild, because they had a ridge that was poking all the way up along the eastern seaboard, and now the ridge is notably suppressed with that supposed coastal system on the 23rd, which may bring a bit of frozen precip just in time for the Christmas holiday. But again, that's 9-10 days out. I can hardly believe it, Joe. 2 weeks from today, it's Christmas.
Yep. Moving right along. I always said that once you get to Halloween, from November 1st to December 25th is just one long day. It's like a black hole of time. I'm looking at the icon. I want to see if the icon gives us a bit of a clue here in terms of the upper air, and then I'll take a look at the surface just to see for the end of this week. By the way, with the first thing, the GFS actually does change it to snow. And even the icon has some blue there for the system for tonight. So the globals are even colder today. So here's the next one in Nebraska. You see it just sort of hanging there in Nebraska. And there's your low that starts to reform in the Carolinas. Moves on. It's just almost like a giant arm here. Yeah, the icon doesn't develop the secondary until it's way too late. That may not be correct with all the energy that's going on aloft. I would think that would probably not be correct. So this is something we're not going to have a resolution on in this show. So I think we can come back to us full screen. And okay, there you are. There I am. I could take a look at the chat board here, which is always a good thing. I think we had more super chat hits, Mr. Rayo.
Yeah, I know that Leon Probitsky hit super chats. We also have one from Joe Arabia. Thank you very much, Joe. We Joes like to stick together. Leon was one. Brandon Doherty hit super chats, and that's about as far back as I can go for the moment. But we thank all for hitting the tip jar this morning. And we have quite a few people watching this morning, Joe. 208 people watching. We started streaming almost an hour ago. We're up to 71 likes. So if you have not done so already, hit the like button, and let's see if we can make it to 100 before the day is out. And that would be nice, too.
Yes. So how about we do let's look at the new HRRR and see if that's any different. So I'm going to switch this map. I'm going to give everybody a thrill today. Let's go with the NAM snow amounts for today. So because I showed you the precip amounts, and let's look at the snow amounts. And then tomorrow night we'll know whether this model is a NAM or a sham. So here we go. So Joe, the NAM gives New York City 0.8, Yonkers 1.0, Poughkeepsie 2.8, and Middletown 2.4. But it gives 3.9 for Bridgeport, 4.1 for Brentwood, which is near Islip, 6.1 for Waterbury, 7.2 for Hartford, and 9.5 for Norwich. So it basically has that upper low surprise. Even Albany gets 7.6 on the NAM. Okay. So that's the NAM's idea is there's your jackpot zone. So whether those numbers are right, I would focus away from the numbers and just say that that's the jackpot zone on the NAM.
I mean, that's what I was saying about a half an hour ago, that you have the main system, the one that is still in place north of Lake Erie, coming in, fading out, throwing its energy to a new system to the east. But between the two, there's usually maybe I could call it the sham zone. and it looks like New York and parts of the Hudson Valley is in the so-called sham zone, only getting an inch or two, or at most 3, whereas places to the east are getting clobbered with 6, 8, and even 9 inches of snow. So we'll see if this all pans out during the overnight hours tonight.
Now the HRRR, which now is different because it was showing heavier snow amounts at eastern Long Island. Now it shows lesser amounts at eastern Long Island and has a little bubble of an inch or 2 in western Long Island into Queens. Gives New York City 0.1, Bridgewater 1 inch, Yonkers 2.2, Bridgeport 1.6, Poughkeepsie 4.2, Middletown 4.4, and Hartford 5 inches. So that's what that model is doing. And if we want to look at the GFS's profile of the precip and translate that to 10 to 1 snowfall, and I'm looking at this for the first time, 5.4 for Middletown, 3.4 for Poughkeepsie, an inch for Yonkers, 0.6 in New York City, 0.2 at Islip, some heavier snows. Oh, I jumped the shark here. Hang on a second, because that's with the second one now on top of it.
What the hell is that?
That was from the second. My time frame jumped out about 60 hours. So you see, look, they're all different. They all have different ideas. There's a little bubble there of 6 touching northwest New Jersey and the northeastern Pennsylvania border. We're not going to know until the radar tells us this late today and tonight. That's really the bottom line. These short-range models are not useful in a situation like this. So let me go to the 24-hour snowfall. If I could use the 24-hour snowfall. Well, let's see.
I love it. Middletown, what is that, 14.8?
Yeah, so yeah, the coast numbers don't go up, but the inland numbers do. I mean, this would be a big snow from the GFS would suggest a big snow just inland of the coast.
Right.
But let me see if I can get the 24-hour numbers, because that's more useful than having. Remember, those are two systems on top of each other too. So let me go to southern New England. We'll go to this is pivotal weather that I'm using.
And you know what's funny, Joe? There are people who look at this, the pivotal weather numbers, see 14.8, and immediately if they were on TV or on radio, they would go right on the air and say, all right, get ready for the big one.
Right. So we can see this on the regional map. So here's the first one. All right. So here's the first one. We'll get rid of that. Now we'll bring in the second one. So here's the second one. And the thing is, it's 24 hours. So every time I move this 6 hours, 6 hours come off, 6 hours come on. So here's the peak. Here's one of the peaks. So you can see where the big snows are with the second one. Basically north of 80, when I say big snows, 6 inches plus, north of 84, the accumulation line gets down to about 287 in New York. Connecticut does well. Northeastern Pennsylvania does well. Upstate New York does well. And if I move it up another 6 hours, you see the peaks that develop up big amounts in southern Vermont, western Mass, southwestern New Hampshire, and on it goes. So what you want to see going forward, and it'd be interesting to see what the European does today, because the European's been probably the most consistent of all the models in the last couple of days from what I noticed, is to have a secondary develop faster and take over faster, so that it will take advantage of what cold air is around, which is, as you pointed out, Joe, it's there's not a lot of it. There's not a whole lot of warm air either, but there's certainly, the quality of the cold air is not the best. So we'll just have to wait and see how these models handle the secondary development as we go down the road.
I'm sure between now and the end of February, I am sure for all of you snow lovers, there will be some time that we will have very cold air in place, cold high pressure, let's say over northern Vermont, and a warm, soggy storm coming up from the south. And there will be no question, no doubt, that we will have a major snowfall. But today, with only a modest amount of cold air in place, I mean, the snow we've been saying is going to be more or less the slushy and mushy type anyway, and really will not amount to all that much unless you happen to enjoy watching the snow fall on the grass or on the trees. But as I said, if they did their job, they being the highway departments and municipalities, there shouldn't be much of any of a problem on many of the roadways this afternoon or this evening, because a lot of that snow will melt on many of the main drags.
Luis Aricio is on the chat board saying he's in the eastern Poconos, elevation about 1,100 feet, wet snow, varying rates, 30 degrees, and less than 1 inch on the ground so far. The roads are wet. So certainly elevation is going to help you here on a day like today, at least from what falls during the day side. And mainly because of the fact that the intensities are, if we were seeing moderate snows on the observations, you'd be covering the pavement pretty quick in the inland spots. But we're only seeing a few pockets where there's some steady snow going on. So you're gonna have to wait till late this afternoon to take advantage of this. And David Schwartz, who says that New York City gets between an inch and 100 inches of snow this winter, is banking on that. Yeah, it'll be somewhere in that range. Let's hope it's at least an inch.
Yeah.
And thanks for hitting the super chat tip jar. Thanks also those of you who hit the like button today to take us over 101 likes. We most appreciate it. So on that note, I want to get the dog outside to the park before it rains again.
Okay.
And since it's light enough, my chances of hitting a deer are lower than they were last night. I don't want to do that again.
I have not hit a deer, and there's a lot of deer. At least there was. I when I first moved up here in 2002, you could see, anywhere from 2 to 6 deer on roadways, on my front lawn, or whatever, in the light of day or at night. We don't see that much. I mean, the deer are still out there, but I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago, traveling on one of the local roads here, I saw a deer jump out in front of me, didn't hit him, but he actually, if you talk about sideswiping, he actually sideswiped me. You could actually hear the hair on the deer scraping up against one side of the door or the quarter panel. That's about as close as I've ever come to actually hitting a deer, but I'm sure it wasn't very much fun when you hit that one last night.
Well, mine hit the front of the truck head on and flew in the air, went airborne to the other side of the road. I thank God there was, well, a car from the other side had just clipped the deer. So I think it was standing on the road just kind of stunned, which is why it didn't get out of the way. Talk about deer in the headlights. That was exactly what it was, Joe, on the deer's part and on my part. So when I hit it, it was standing still, basically standing still, and it just went airborne, clear to the other side of the road and landed on the pavement, and it was gone. And it was horrible. I mean, I feed my deer outside my house. I know some people say you shouldn't do that, but I put corn out for them, and they come up to the house. It's a safe place. The coyotes don't bother them. The bear don't bother them. So they come up in the evening hours. I see my outside light goes on. The deer are feeding. It brings me some joy to see them eating. The does in the summertime, they would bring their babies to feed here during the day, which was always nice to see. There's a town, I saw a story about this. There's a town north of you. I think it's in Dutchess County. I don't remember the name of the town, but it has a very large population of white-tailed deer. And there was this group that was studying them uh, showed that the does were actually teaching the young to look both ways when crossing the road. And they do that. They you could see they had the videos of does, going out to the road first, looking both ways, and then crossing, and then the fawns would come and do the same thing. Here, it's much more rural, so the roads are the exception rather than the rule. Say in a more developed, the area I'm talking about that they did this was actually it was a fairly well developed area with lots of subdivisions and so on. Here you don't have that, so I see some of the older deer when they're coming near the road and being cautious and looking both ways, but uh, it was a shame. It really was. I believe it's the second time it happened. If you've never hit a deer, you don't ever really want to go through that experience. Okay, because most times if you talk to people that have had hit deers, their cars get totaled. And this is the second time that my truck, I mean, there's like a little crack in the grill and in the license plate holder, and that's it.
You see on the chat board, in fact, you're being reprimanded, Bobby Rayo, no relation, I might add. Bobby Rayo saying, Joe, you're not supposed to feed the wildlife, but you know that already. So
I said
yes.
I already said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And incidentally, on my way to the post office on Friday, I did kill some wildlife. I accidentally ran over a squirrel, and I was driving along. The squirrel sees my car and stops. He stops suddenly. And then he decides he's going to make his move. Unfortunately, when he made his move,
he made the wrong decision. I had that.
And blump. Yeah.
I had that happen a month or two ago. Same thing. He stopped. I slowed down. Well, he looked like mine actually went in the correct direction. He should have kept on going in that direction. And then he turned around and went the other way, and that was his fatal mistake, which of course was taken advantage of by the turkey vultures and the eagle and all the other wildlife. So they got to feed their families. So nothing was wasted.
Ah, yes. And Steve LaPointe, who I might add, I know that I'm Steve's favorite. He just loves. He says Rayo the animal killer. All right, Steve. Thanks a lot. Two things, Joe. Number one, I did not mention to you beforehand. And unfortunately, I waited until now. I'll mention it to you right now, is that I have not one but two library talks this week, one tomorrow night, one on Wednesday. Those are my last talks for the rest of the month and through much of the upcoming month of January. But tomorrow night and Wednesday night, I presume we will have to move to 8:30 instead of our usual 7:35 time. And number two, it's time to say goodbye to everyone.
Well, before we do that, this is why sometimes we should just keep our mouths shut. Here, this is what Billy the Kid got out of this whole conversation. And you know what? You're really such a pain in what I sit on. Okay, you really are. Okay, these two are driving recklessly, he said. Really, just go away. Really, go away. I'm like this close to banning you on this channel because you come on here with this constant negative attitude, and it's disgusting. It really is. It just really hacks me off. Anyway, I'm sorry to end the show that way, but that's it. It goes out in a way that only Bob Grant would be proud of.
I'm going to go now because at 1:00 we have the annual German American Social Club of Putnam Valley Christmas party, and we're going to get a chance to stuff ourselves with salmon and prime rib, and we're going to be able to hear the music of Bud and Linda, who are there every year. And so we'll just Steve LaPointe is saying, just ask Renata to fill in for you. If you don't want me, yeah, Renata can fill in for me then if you want to start at 7:35 tomorrow night.
Just drink the good beer.
Just drink the good beer. I'm an embarrassment to Renata at these German get-togethers because these especially the men, they come out, well, Joe, what kind of beer do you like? And I'm embarrassed because I have not had a glass of beer. I have not drank a glass of beer in my entire 66 years of being on this planet. I never acquired a taste for beer, and I just don't like beer. And so everybody's especially at the German Fest and the Oktoberfest, they're all saying, I'm prosing, and they're hoisting big mugs of beer or whatever like that. And I'm sitting there with my glass of Coca-Cola.
Well, you wouldn't like Helen, Georgia, which is about half an hour from my house, which is a big German town. It's a small, big German town, I should say, and they have all the it's all German restaurants, and it's just wonderful. Great place to go during Oktoberfest. Great place to go right now before Christmas, except I don't go because it's always packed with people, and I'll try to avoid that. But if you ever come down to Georgia, you should go to Helen, Georgia. It's beautiful. It's in the mountains. It's just a gorgeous drive there and back, and it's a nice little town that you can do in a day. And on that note, I'm going to the park. So
Goodbye.
So 8:30
Yes.
tomorrow.
8:30, yes. 8:30 on Monday and 8:30 on Wednesday of this week. And what more can I say except have a good afternoon, a good day, safety on the roads to everybody. Let's see what happens tonight, and we'll have a post-mortem on what happens today and tonight on the show tomorrow night at 8:30.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.